Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our driver ratings for the Mexican Grand Prix. A very exciting weekend, and looking at the scores I have here, we have a few highs and a few very, very, very lows. So, before we get into all that, remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to our members, Dakota, The Joyous James, Robin Myers, and Cinnamon Strudel. If you want to become a member, there's a link in the description. Let's get into this, though, with the ratings, of course, starting, as we always do, with our lovely Haas boys. Firstly, Kevin the Mag Magnussen, who once again had a good race weekend. Very good indeed, actually. Qualified 7th, finished 7th. I mean, now the Haas lads are consistently getting those points finishes, even consistently getting double points finishes, to the point that normally a points finish for a Haas is just an automatic 10. I might have to change my mind on that, but a 7th place, that is an automatic 10 in a Haas, because that was really good there. You know, towards the end, it looked like Oscar Piastri was going to be chasing him down, but even Oscar Piastri in the McLaren did not have the pace to match Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. However the hell that works. But yeah, Magnussen, great weekend for him. 10 out of 10. Going across to Nico Hulkenberg now, who also had a good weekend. Qualified 10th, finished the race in 9th. And like I said, we're not giving out automatic 10 out of 10s for points finishes in Haas anymore. He gets a 9 for this one, just because I think he messed up his qualifying lap in Q3 and had to settle for 10th. I think it was a better lap in there for him, and then in comparison to Magnussen, he was a little bit off there, but still, nonetheless, a great double points finish for Haas, who continue to have a very, very good year. And if your name is Oliver Behrman, you're looking at this and going, yes, that'll do. I'll take that very much. Thank you very much. See you next year. But if you're Nico Hulkenberg, you're looking at this and going, oh no, not the Sauber, because Sauber actually had a very good weekend this weekend, but that's still bad news, because a very good weekend for Sauber resulted in 14th and 15th place. So let's start with Zhou Guanyu. Once again took his rightful place at the back of the grid on qualifying, but would get promoted to 19th place after Ocon moved to the pit lane. Then from there, finished up in 15th. The only people he beat were Lawson and Perez, both of whom had their own very different issues. Overall, though, you know, what can you say? Didn't crash, got to the end, and 15th is okay for a Sauber. So I'm going to give him a 7. I wrote down 8 originally, but when you think about it, it's more of a 7 than an 8. But that's a very different story from this man, Valtteri Bottas, because my goodness, this may be under the radar here, but this was Valtteri Bottas' best race in years. What a weekend for Valtteri Bottas here this weekend. Firstly, escapes Q1. Beats the like of Piastri, Perez, Ocon, Zhou. Who else was it? Was it Colapinto? It might have been Colapinto, maybe. Doesn't matter. Beat them all in qualifying in a Sauber. Then, from there, strategy realistically screwed him over. They left him out for ages. He was the last one to pit, but he made it work. When he pit, he was P11. And it didn't seem to be struggling too difficultly. Not like, you know, Piastri was or other people were struggling on the tyres. Bottas somehow made it work. Then from there, fought back in that second stint. Eventually ended up in 14th place, which doesn't look great. But nonetheless, Valtteri Bottas, 10 out of 10. What a weekend. Honestly, really, really impressive stuff from Valtteri, who has gone under the radar, but that was great from Valtteri Bottas. Who's next? It is Yuki Tsunoda. Oh no. So, Yuki Tsunoda showed pace throughout every single practice session this weekend. I think he was third in the first 2 practice sessions, and I think he fell down to like 6th or 7th in the third one, but still showed tremendous pace. Then we get to qualifying. Q1 goes well, but Q2, just as he's going to do his second fast lap, he crashes the car and qualifies 11th, which I was looking at that, and I think in the qualifying reaction video, I was like, not a great thing there, but you can still do well from 11th place. You can still get some good points. Well, his race ended before the first corner. Very much a racing incident. I don't blame him or Albon for that incident in particular, but, Yuki Tsunoda, to have so much potential in practice sessions and to end the weekend crashing twice, I mean, what can you do? I think it's a 3 out of 10. I see, again, I'm changing my mind here because I wrote down 4. But realistically, a 3, I think, is more appropriate for Yuki Tsunoda. Not a great weekend. Again, Yuki always has this thing of, he has got tremendous, tremendous pace at this Mexico circuit, but he never gets to show it off. Obviously, what happened here with him and Albon, last year, he had tremendous pace, then he had a little crash with Piastri. The year before, he had tremendous pace, and he had a crash with Daniel Ricciardo. He just always goes wrong for Yuki, and I think this is honestly his strongest track. So it must be devastating for him to have this happen over and over and over again. Another man who might be a bit devastated is this one. It's Liam Lawson. Now, Liam Lawson also qualified a bit lower than maybe you'd expect in 12th. I think he got a bit screwed over by the red flag caused by Tsunoda. Didn't get a chance to go for that next fastest lap. Then from there, had an okay race. Of course, the big headline is his beef with Perez. The move that they went on to after the second DRS zone, where Perez just dived down the inside. The move was never on. Had a bit of beef, got past Perez in the end, gave him the middle finger. Thought his fighting days were over in the race, but no, he bumped into Colapinto later on. Colapinto took out his front wing, had to pit near the end of the race, and that just completely destroyed him. So he went from 12th to 16th, but realistically, not his fault for any of it. I don't think he did a foot wrong. He has apologised to Perez for giving him the finger, because that is unsportsmanlike. And if there's one thing I detest, it's unsportsmanlike behaviour. Oh my goodness, it's the worst thing in the world. And why should these drivers show emotion? Bottle it up, lads. Come on. Anyway, Lawson, I'm going to give him a 6. I see, I'm changing my mind on all these scores written down. I give him a 7, but realistically, no. A 6 for Lawson, I think, is fair. But next is the man who hit him, Franco Colapinto. Now, Colapinto, qualifying, not good. Qualified in 16th place. We spoke about last time out how, he massively outshone Albon in qualifying in Austin. Well, it was the other way around this time. Albon making it through to Q3, Colapinto out in Q1. Then the race itself, he finished 12th, but was really nowhere for a lot of the race. Never really showed the speed that we've seen from him in the last few races. It's probably his weakest one thus far. I'm going to give him a 5 out of 10. Then across to Alex Albon. Like I said, good qualifying from him to be P9, but we never really got to see anything. Race ending before turn 1. That incident when he was squeezed between Gasly and Tsunoda, and both him and Tsunoda were out from there. I'm just going to give him a 5, and we'll move on. Esteban Ocon, awful qualifying. Qualified 19th place. They made some changes to the car and started from the pit lane. From there, I don't actually remember seeing him at all in the race, and he would end up in 13th, which is about where you would expect the Alpine to be. So I'll give him a 5. There you go. Well done, Esteban. His teammate did much better. Gasly showing some tremendous pace as of late to really show, I've always hyped up Gasly. I think he's really good, and he hasn't been able to necessarily show it a lot this year, but the last few races have been very good. Qualified 8th, fantastic from there. And then in the race, did lose some positions, but still scored a point for the Alpine team in 10th. I'm going to give him a 10, because it's an Alpine and he scored points. It's allowed. Lance Stroll now, he qualified 14th, and you know what? Had a decent race. I saw him do some overtakes, didn't really get into much trouble, didn't annoy anyone, just missed out on points in the Aston Martin, P11. I think that's an 8 out of 10. I think that was a very good race weekend from Lance Stroll in an Aston that's just nothing. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just nothing. So to, do anything with it, I think is should be met with reward. So there it is. 8 points. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso, his 400th Grand Prix weekend ends in a DNF. I think I saw online that his 200th and 300th Grand Prix weekends also ended in DNF. But yeah, qualified 13th. I mean, you could say with Lance and Alonso that maybe they were a bit screwed over by the red flag as well, but they haven't shown any pace all weekend, so there's no realistic reason to believe they would be in Q3. And yeah, didn't really get much in. Was it like 15 or 16 he retired from the race? Yeah, I don't know. It's a 4 or a 5. I'll go with a 5 for Fernando. I'm feeling kind. Oscar Piastri. Not feeling as kind to Oscar because I think this might be his worst ever Formula 1 race weekend. This was really rather bad from Oscar Piastri. So, out in Q1, no one's blamed but himself. Track limits on his fast lap, then he just didn't have the pace afterwards on the used tyres. Then from there, did not make the recovery I was expecting. Only good enough for 8th place. And spent a lot of the early portion of the race still down in like 16th or 17th place. At one point, Zhou had got past him. And the McLaren this weekend was I'd say the second fastest car on the grid, but you could easily argue it was the first. To be 8th in this race, I think, isn't really good enough and didn't show any pace all weekend. Rather disappointing for Oscar Piastri. I'm giving him a 3. And you might see that as very harsh, but hey, maybe it is. Lando Norris did a lot better. Qualifying wasn't great. He qualified 3rd, which, is okay, but I think he should have realistically been a bit closer to Max, if not in front of him, because the Red Bull was really struggling this weekend. But in the end, finished in P2. I think the only reason he didn't win this race is because Max was blocking him early on. We'll get onto that in a little bit. Was able to hold him behind for quite some time and waste his time. If that hadn't happened, I think he would have been on course to win this race. He had some fantastic pace towards the end, chasing down Carlos Sainz, but he just ran out of laps from there. Realistically, Lando did nothing wrong this weekend, so he gets a 10 out of 10. But now, the big man, the main man of the weekend, Carlos Sainz. What can you say? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Qualified on pole, won the race. He might have led every lap as well, I'm trying to remember if anyone else... Oh, no, Max led at the start, of course, didn't he? And behind the safety car. But apart from that, he got Max incredibly quickly. Max went from the safety car restart, built a second gap. A lap later, not only did Sainz break that second gap, but was then in front of him. Really went for that daring move to get past. And my goodness, from there, he just controlled the whole thing. What can you say? It's an easy 10 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz, not a 0. There we go. Charles Leclerc also had a good weekend this weekend. Qualifying didn't go great. He was very disappointed in himself to only qualify 4th. But then from there had an okay race, was gifted P2 thanks to Max Verstappen, and then from there was okay, was probably left out a bit. His tyre strategy kind of maybe screwed him a little bit, so when he got to that point with Norris, his tyres were just done. Tremendous save to not go into the wall, but yeah, from there finishing up in P3, was never really anywhere near his teammate though this weekend. It's very rare that we say that Carlos Sainz is out and out quicker than Leclerc, but it seemed like every session, even the practice sessions, Leclerc was not on the pace of Carlos Sainz this weekend. So with Leclerc, I'm going to give him an 8, just because I don't think he was quite there with Sainz this weekend, but still a very good weekend. George Russell now, qualified 5th, finished 5th, but still a good weekend. Had the old Mercedes car, Lewis was in the newer one, but you couldn't tell because George really was much quicker than Lewis throughout all the weekend. Of course, George had the damage as well to the front wing at one point, which also slowed him down. But overall, good stuff. 8 out of 10 for George Russell, if I click on the right thing. There we go. His teammate Lewis Hamilton, as I said, Don't think that new Mercedes is working quite like it should be, because he was about 3 tenths off Lewis in qualifying. Sorry, 3 tenths off George in qualifying. In the race itself, when both cars were healthy, George beat him quite easily. Then towards the end of the race, when Lewis had a car that wasn't damaged and George had that front wing damage, I think it took 16 laps for Lewis Hamilton to get past him. He did eventually get past him, but yeah. Overall, an okay weekend. I'm going to give them both 8s, because, I think it's hard to tell who actually had the better car this weekend, because that Mercedes is just not working. And here we go, everyone. The main event. Oh, can't open the file. It's not currently support. Oh, dearie me. It's all gone wrong. So not only did Perez have a bad weekend, but apparently his file of his picture that I have is also corrupted. So bad news, everyone. But we move, because Sergio Perez... We spoke about Oscar Piastri's bad weekend and how it might be his worst weekend of his F1 career. In comparison to Sergio Perez, Oscar Piastri had a wonderful time, because Sergio Perez, my God, the trouble is, I was gonna say this is the worst weekend of his F1 career, but over the last few years he's had so many bad ones. It's hard to tell if this truly is the worst F1 weekend of his career. If he had crashed on the first corner, that would have been a better race than what actually happened. So firstly, he's out in Q1. 18th place. Only beats Ocon and Zhou in qualifying. And it's home race. Home race weekend, let's not forget this. Then at the start... He doesn't know how to park his car in a grid box, which he's done like 200 times or something before. However many races he's had, he doesn't know how to do it. He's about a foot over the line, gets a penalty from there, has to pit early for that penalty. Then he's beefing with Lawson, who is heavily rumoured to be replacing him, and Lawson outshines him in every single way. And then he causes himself to have side pod damage, which massively, massively slows him down. And then towards the end, they do the most optimistic pit for fastest lap you've ever seen in your life. Sergio Perez, who was consistently the slowest person on the track, goes, yeah, I'll pit for fastest lap, I'll definitely get that. Nowhere near. Finishes 17th. There was only 17 drivers who finished this race. Sergio Perez was in the third fastest car on the grid and finished dead last at his home Grand Prix. I'm going to do something now that I think I've only ever done twice before. It may only actually be once, but I think I've done it twice. I'm giving him a 0 out of 10. And the reason before I said I don't know if this is his worst weekend ever is because I remember who got the very first 0 out of 10 in these driver ratings, and it was also Sergio Perez, and that was for the Monaco Grand Prix last year. So fight amongst yourselves which was worse, but I think this one was probably a bit worse because it was his home race. Dreadful, dreadful weekend for Perez. Hopefully better things to come in Brazil. And then, this man, Max Verstappen, the reigning world champion, the championship leader. My God, let's talk about this because there's lots to talk about. Let's call it a mixed weekend for Max Verstappen. Because the highs were very high, the lows were very low. So let's focus on the highs to begin with. Let's focus on that. Qualifying lap, incredible. That Red Bull did not deserve to be on the front row, but in the hands of Max Verstappen, it was. And I think Max Verstappen's qualifying pace is nowhere near one of his top 5 strengths. His qualifying often, apart from the past couple years or so, has not been great. But this year, his qualifying pace has really come on in leaps and bounds. So, qualifying lap, realistically, that Red Bull should have been 5th, 6th on the grid, but no. Second place. Fantastic. And also, he had to do it in one lap because his first lap got deleted for track limits. So, bit of pressure on him there. got it done. Fantastic qualifying lap from Max Verstappen. Then, the start. Beautiful. Pulls alongside Sainz immediately. Fantastic start from him. Then goes into the first corner, claims that place. Some people go, he pushed him off. It's lap one. It's fine. Takes the lead, manages it from there. The restart. Incredible restart. Went so early, caught Sainz off guard. Really went well from there. Other positives. When Sainz overtook him, he fought back really strong. But Sainz had DRS again. So there wasn't much to do from there. After the penalties were given, his comeback was really good. Fought through the grid really well to come back to 6th place. So basically, the entire weekend from Max Verstappen was really, really good. Apart from about 30 seconds near the start, a couple laps after the safety car ended, where madness prevailed. So let's break that down now. If we're done with the positives, let's focus on the negatives here. Now, I think the first penalty is defensible in a way, because you could argue that Max maybe thought he was ahead at the apex, so maybe thought that he deserved that space after what happened in Texas. So you could go, maybe. Yeah, maybe. From there, you could say that he thought he was entitled to that space and could do basically what he did in Texas. With the power of hindsight and eyes, you could see that they were both alongside, so he has to give the racing room. So that is a penalty. Although you could question, is it 10 or a 5? But that's a debate for another time. The second one, you can't defend at all. I think what happened was he saw the red mist from the first incident. Maybe he thought Lando was giving the place back. But even if he was, that move was never on there. And he just took both of them out and gave Leclerc the place. Just utter madness. And it just shows that Max is prepared to do anything to win that world title. It's, people are drawing comparisons to him and Lewis at the end of 21, and it is the exact same thing. These races are ticking down, and Max needs that world title and will do anything to win it, and that is exactly what we saw here. He saw an opportunity and he took it. I mean, realistically, that when you look at the greats of F1, if you look at what Senna did, if you look at what Schumacher did, they did worse because they actually hit their opponent, and Max just slightly gives him a little push. But that's how much that title means to him, and he's trying to fight for it in the third fastest car. So in a way, commendable, but in another way, against the rules massively. So, as I say, weekend too harsh for him. Everything apart from that moment was fantastic. But unfortunately, that moment happened. And I think Martin Brundle summed it up perfectly afterwards, where he was he said, I think I'm going to paraphrase him now because I haven't written down what he said, but he said, I'm in awe of Max, but I hate it when he does stuff like this. And that's the thing with me as well, because I'm such a huge Max Verstappen fan. And I think he's fantastic. And I think he's easily the best driver on the grid. And I will defend him all the time. But then he does something like that. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, Max, I can't defend that, can I? So it gets difficult. And now you see people going Max has no wheel-to-wheel racing skills. And you're like, that's just not true. It's yeah, he's done this stuff, but also go back and look at some other races he's done, because he's got loads of wheel-to-wheel skills. He's one of the best drivers on the grid, but people only remember what's happened recently, and the last race, he has not done well. So, I'm going to give him a 4, because I think, like I said, everything else was 10 out of 10 worthy, but that was a -6 in my book. So yeah, not a great one for Max. I'm hoping maybe giving him these penalties will maybe calm him down a little bit, but it won't, because all he cares about is winning the world title, and he doesn't care about these penalties. He doesn't care about anything. All he cares about is winning the world championship, And that's what he's here to do, and that's what he will do, because I still don't think that Lando Norris can come anywhere near him towards the end of this season. He will do anything he can to win it, and he probably will. But it does make it very difficult to defend my favourite driver when he does stuff like this. So, there you go. Hopefully next weekend it's completely controversy-free, everyone has a good time, and then maybe afterwards the drivers can all have some kind of picnic together and take selfies and put it on Instagram, and everyone go, oh wow, isn't it great that they're all friends? And then the world will be happy. But I imagine that something stupid will happen. We'll have to talk about it for months to come. I'll see you then, because we're back next weekend for all things Brazilian Grand Prix. It's a sprint race weekend, so the preview is on the Thursday, reaction to sprint qualifying on the Friday, reaction to the race and proper qualifying on the Saturday, and then the race on Sunday, driver ratings on Monday as per usual. All that to come next week. Subscribe for it. I'll see you then. Goodbye!